So now let's hop over to our Powerable Spotlight actor. And we want to basically just make sure that we have the version of this Powerable that is a spotlight. And so we know here we've got our includes that are automatically defined for us. We have our U class. I'm just going to make this one blueprintable, comma, blueprint type. Again, that may not actually be how we're going to be using these, but that's okay. And then because this one is already an A Powerable actor base, we actually don't need to implement the interface again because the A Powerable actor base already has the interface. So what we're going to do is we need a public. We're going to make another constructor. So this is where the constructor, if it hasn't already been filled in, is actually just the exact same name as the class with parentheses. So A Powerable Spotlight Actor, parentheses, semicolon. And then if we look at our Powerable Spotlight Actor.cpp, we see there's nothing in there. So we want to actually show context actions, generate definition. And then we're going to go down and we're going to make some protected categories. Protected colon. And first we're going to override power on and power off. So virtual void power on and select it so that it adds the override. Virtual void power off override. By the way, for the sake of time, because when I did this previously, I put in comments on all of these. It is a good idea to comment your code, but making this video would be significantly longer if you watched me sit down and tell you what to write in for comments for all of these. So for right now, I'm not really adding a lot of comments, but it is a good idea to comment your code so that you know what's going on. But okay, so we have those power on and power off overrides, and we can Alt enter with the power on name selected, generate definition, and then we can select power off, Alt enter, generate definition, and then we've got both of those there. And then we're just going to add in 2 additional U properties. So this is going to be, first we do U property, and we're going to make this have the specifier blueprint read only, comma, visible anywhere, comma, and then I think that should be fine. And then we're going to make this this is going to be our spotlight component, which is going to be what we actually use to render the spotlight. So we're going to do T object PTR, T object pointer like we did before, then hit enter to autocomplete. Then we're going to type in U spotlight component. U spotlight component. And then it asks you if automatically, if you start hitting enter, if you want to add the include, you do. That means that actually then it just now will have an include here automatically added in for include components, spotlight component. And this is one of those things that Rider is really good about, is automatically giving you the recommendations to add includes for things that you don't have, because that's not included in core minimal. Then you need to add it explicitly when you actually need it. And so then we're just going to name this value spotlight, semicolon. And then we're going to make another value that is going to be controlling the light on intensity. We're going to call this U property again, U property macro, blueprint read only, comma, edit anywhere this time instead of just visible anywhere. And that should be fine. And then this is going to be a float light on property. Or I'm sorry, light on intensity. We're going to make that equal to 5,000.0 and semicolon. So just for clarification, this is basically establishing a default value. And this value can be changed after the fact. But if you don't set up that default value, then the light on intensity is going to be 0 by default. And if you open it up in a blueprint or you add it to a blueprint, then it's going to actually save that as 0. And you would have to manually type in 5,000 to get that to change in the future. So it's just always a good idea to have like a sane default where you need it. Okay, so now we've got all of that there. We're just going to go to our Powerable Spotlight Actor.c++. And then in the constructor, our a Powerable Spotlight Actor, I'm going to make a comment that says initialize the spotlight component. And here, this is actually going to be really similar to the way that we set up the default sub-object before, except it needs to be a type of uSpotlight component. So I'm going to say spotlight equals create default sub-object, and then hit enter, select that. uSpotlight component, and then in the parentheses, we're going to type in text and quotation marks. I'm going to call that spotlight. And then I just want to make semicolon at the end of that. And then here, instead of setting root component, what we want to do is set up an attachment so that this spotlight knows to attach to the default scene root that we set up in our Powerable Actor base. So we have this default scene root, and we did set root component. But in the spotlight, because it's actually going to need to be parented to that root component, we're actually going to do spotlight, and then it's going to be an arrow, which is a hyphen greater than. We also need to make sure that it's typed correctly. So hyphen greater than setup attachment and default scene root, and then enter. Now, by the way, if you have familiarity with this in other contexts, this arrow is saying that you're accessing the underlying properties on this pointer. So if you did, if you were accessing a class directly, it would be like spotlight dot setup attachment. But one thing that's kind of cool is if you're somebody that has worked in, like, say, C# a lot, where all you have is the dot, there's no arrow related to references or pointers. If you type in dot setup attachment and then select that, it will automatically convert it to the arrow for pointer reference because that's the one that's valid for calling that function. So you don't actually always have to know whether it's a dot or an arrow, because if you use the dot, Rider will complete it for you. So I'm just going to delete that. And so there we have it. We have our spotlight. That means that it will be actually attached to... Oh, looks like I spelled this wrong. Initialize. It doesn't matter. Okay. And then now we have here our power on and power off. And you see it does super power on and super power off. So we just need to add the functionality that's specific to the spotlight. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if, parentheses, spotlight. And this means, like, so if that we actually have a spotlight, if it's not null or missing, then curly braces. And then we're going to go to spotlight. And this time we can do dot set intensity, enter. And then that automatically turns that into the arrow, and I'm going to do this as the light on intensity value, and then just hit the arrow, semicolon, and there we go. Then for the power off, all we have to do is just that same thing. Select the whole thing, Control C, go down into the power off, hit enter a couple times, Control V, But what we're going to do here is instead of doing set intensity light on intensity, we're just going to set it to 0.0. And then that means that it knows that when that light is off, it's just going to have no intensity whatsoever. Now, if we wanted to optimize this a little bit more, there's actually another thing we can do, which we can do spotlight dot b effects world and make that equal to false. Then this is just kind of an optimization. Let me see that that's the correct way to do that. Yeah. Okay. So this is one that you actually don't do with a setter function. You actually do set the value. And so I'm actually just going to copy that in here. Control C, Control V, and this is going to be true. And that's really it. Now we actually just can hit Control B now because we still have the editor closed. And okay, that succeeded. So then now the last bit we need to do is set up our switch component and our generator actor, and then we can bring this all together and make sure it works.